Hey, thanks for tuning in. So today we're going to talk about buying in the Bay Area. I'm sure you know it's very competitive just based on how many buyers are coming in, and typically what we're looking at is a shortage of inventory. So when that happens, you're seeing more of a bidding process occur, especially for the homes that are like, A plus properties, right? They're looking perfect on the inside, they've been remodeled, right? Their inspection reports are clean. And so those homes tend to, one, sell for more just by the nature of the move-in readiness of the home, and two, you're going to get a lot of competition. So typically if a home gets multiple offers, it's often the top three that kind of bid it out and try to get into contract. So what we're seeing now, right, on the back end of COVID-19, granted it's still going on outside and shelter in place is still occurring, we're trying to figure out what's a good price, right? That's often the big question for buyers who are in the market, because they, one, don't want to spend too much. No one does, right? No one likes to overpay for anything. But two, they're also trying to figure out what's fair market value, right? And the difference between those two is if you have a loan in place and you are looking to make a purchase, the bank will only fund what is fair market value for the home. They won't exceed that, right? So if you have a loan, typically an appraisal is done. And so when the appraisal occurs, that sets the price for the home. Unfortunately, sometimes it comes in short, but if you're lucky, it's going to come up above what you offered, and you're going to get instant value on the home. So as we're like navigating this like price question mark, it's really important to consider a few things. One, the list price, right? The list price is set by the listing agent or the selling party, and that price is based on the selling agent's opinion of what he or she believes will bring the most traffic to the home, right? So some agents will intentionally make the list price substantially lower than what the seller wants, right? More people come in, more offers come in, and now the selling party has a better opportunity to do a multiple offer situation, and now you have buyers bidding against each other. And this changes drastically from city to city. So for example, if you're looking at San Francisco, they're at 9% below list price. So that means on average, if you're bidding on a home in San Francisco, you would have to bid 9% above the list price, right? If you're looking in Daly City, you're looking at 7%. But if you're going to say Oakland, that's around 6.5 on average. Sunnyvale, which tends to be a higher price point, they're at 2% above list price. So they're a little bit more transparent. But interestingly enough, if you cross the bridge to Dublin, they're at transparent pricing. Transparent pricing means the listing agent has listed the home at exactly what the seller wants. You might see some fluctuations, 10,000 up or 10,000 below, but typically what you see is what you get. So it kind of gets rid of a lot of the guesswork. But something to keep in mind, as you go look into these cities, right, you can have massive cities like Oakland, San Francisco, San Jose. Each of these cities, because they're so large, have many different neighborhoods, right, with many different price points. So as you zoom into each city, each zip code, each district, right, you're going to see many different price points and different cultures, right? The agents in that one neighborhood are culturally, attuned to, say, listing it transparently. Or if you could go to a different district, culturally, those agents will list it more competitively. So that means their list price is substantially lower, right? So it's interesting to see as we go through the Bay Area and all the different cities at what the agents are doing. And of course, this is a conversation that the buying agent and the selling agent must have, right? Because if you're kind of just shooting in the dark and you're using, say, Zillow or Redfin and their price estimates, they can be a good guidepost, but I don't believe that they're the most accurate information. It's just, if you have an agent who's willing to talk to the agent and kind of have a pre-negotiation, if you will, to find out where the price is, what the seller's expectation is, that's a massive value, right? That's a huge benefit to the buyer when they don't have to rely on an algorithm put out by a third-party company based on, something they saw on the internet. When they're able to talk to the seller and the selling agent, it gives you a deeper insight as to why they're selling, right? Especially if there's sentimental value. Unfortunately, sentimental value does add value to a home. Not in a sense where you will have to pay for it, but in the buyer's mind, this is where my family lived, this is where I raised my children, this home is valuable to me, so therefore it will cost more money to you when you're buying it. That's a factor, right? So when you're talking to the selling party, it's important to find these things out, because if something as much as sentimental value, you really can't put a price on sentiment, and often that price of sentiment is way beyond what the market shows, right? So as my job as the buying agent, if I'm helping my clients buy a home, it's my job to navigate that, right? So when we offer, we understand if a counter that we're receiving, for example, is a fair market value, or is this a number based on greed. And so when you're able to talk to the selling agent and find out these kind of details, why they're selling, what's important to the seller, because at the end of the day, the seller's the one making the decision. A lot of agents will negotiate with the seller, and there's many times where I've been able to help my buyers win the home even though they weren't the highest offer, because of, say, emotional connections, right? Because that's kind of the beauty of negotiating, right? It's almost like a dance where you're able to find out what's the reason that their home is on the market. What's the reason that they're willing to talk to us instead of, say, someone who offered $15,000 more, right? So I was helping a client in San Francisco. He's buying a condo, and I was doing some pre-negotiations. I built a really good relationship with the listing agent. I was able to find out why they were selling and kind of the background story of the seller. My client was a single guy, and I found out that this owner of the property that he wanted to purchase was also owned by a single guy, but he was just at a different phase in life. So the seller was a single guy as well. He had got a dog, he had a girlfriend at the time, and then they had gotten married, and then now his wife was pregnant. So in the course of 5 years of him owning the place, life evolved for him, and he outgrew his one-bedroom apartment. Luckily for my client, he was a single guy. He wanted a dog. He had a girlfriend at the time that he was serious about. And, I had wrote a letter to the seller kind of explaining that this is our circumstance. This is where the connection's important, right? Because the decision that they're making is an emotional decision, especially if all this had happened inside this guy's house. And so he wanted the house to go to someone that would, kind of carry on the legacy of a single guy, buying a house and then kind of letting life unfold. And so because of that, we had put our offer in. It was like 8:00 at night, and a higher offer came in above us. And I was on the phone with the agent, and we're like, "Look, Zach, we like your offer. We have a higher offer, but because of the connection that the seller and buyer had, that I had helped establish, the seller was like, you know what, we're going to work with them no matter what." And so what had happened was, even though we weren't the highest offer, the agent was like, "Look, we're willing to work with you, Zach. You just need to come up in price a little bit, and it'll be yours." So just because we were able to understand why they were selling, even in the competitive market, right? Literally, as they were reviewing our offer, another offer came in that was more money, And if this was like an algorithm or just some sort of like computer generated thing, obviously we would have been kicked out because we didn't have more money. Granted, there's other factors like contingencies at play, but that wasn't a factor in our specific negotiation for the condo in San Francisco. So these are important things as you're entering the market to consider. Like, is your agent helping you negotiate? Are you understanding why the person is selling? Very much so. You have to, I have to understand why my buyer is buying, right? So it's this kind of maze we have to navigate together on both sides, right? You have to understand why the buyer's moving, why the seller's moving, and kind of how everything comes together. Because if that's not happening, right, you're solely stuck on price, right? You're gonna be throwing money into the wind. And sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't, because not all things can be solved with money, right? Because we just saw an example of a buyer winning even though his bid wasn't the highest, represented by a great agent that I know of. That was really cheesy. But nonetheless, right, money isn't always the factor. It helps, right? Granted, a sweet letter will not sway a seller, $100,000, depending on price, right? But I've seen it work. It doesn't always work. And it's important, right, to have these conversations. Something else I wanted to talk about is the interest rate. So right now the interest rate is almost at an all-time low. Despite it shooting up in the past couple months, it has since come down. I had a client get into contract earlier today. His interest rate was at 3%. Another interest rate I've seen is 2.8, to around 3.1. So with this interest rate super low, it's bringing a lot of buyers out just because money's cheap, right? Because the interest rate is low, their mortgage is lower, and they feel comfortable offering more money, right? Because they can play within those numbers. So this is something to keep in mind as you're going out. Because there's more buyers, you're going to see more competition. Because their purchasing power is greater, you're going to see overbidding, right? So as you go out there, you have to keep these things in mind. Of course, it depends on your city. It's going to really depend on if overbidding is going to occur. If you're going to say be in Dublin, if you're in San Francisco, better be ready, right? It's going to be hot. It's one of the hottest markets right now, and it's still going up in terms of price, right? We're looking at 9% above this price. So they're still receiving multiple offers, and there's more wiggle room, right? That list price to the final sale price, there's a lot more guessing. Whereas say if you were in Sunnyvale, they're at 2% above this price. So you take that and it's, slightly above. Whereas San Francisco, you get multiple offers and it's kind of like a dice roll. But it's important, right, to note these things as you enter the market. So if you have any questions, please let me know. If you have any specific cities you'd like to look into, I can do that for you. I have the data from MLS listings, which is, I think, the de facto resource for data. It's where Zillow, Redfin, Truly all pull their data from, right? This is where the homes go in the market for realtors, and that's kind of where we look for homes. So that's the number one spot. That's where the data is made. That's where the data is born, right? So I believe it to be the most accurate. Yes, so let me know if you need any help. I am definitely willing to do so. And I'll see you guys next week. Take care.